In this video, I'm going to quickly go over how to create a pattern and then bend it into a particular shape, sort of like what we see here. So to start out, I need to create a pattern, and I'm going to go to my shape tools, go to my ellipse, and I'm just going to start out with a circle, just like this. And maybe I will just layer this on top of each other, doing something like that. All right, and we'll get these all sort of centered up. Cool. Group them together, object, pattern, and make, and it's going to add it to my swatches. And then what I can start doing is manipulating this a little bit. So if I want more space around these, go to this tool here and just increase the size, and I'm holding down Shift and Option to scale out proportionally. Go back to my shape tool. I'm going to make a shape right here, and I'll do another one offset around it. And then I'm going to go in and maybe add in a triangle just in a sort of random spot, just over here like this. And let's move it down into our pattern. So we'll come sort of right over here. Cool. So we've got something a little bit sort of offset there, and then I could also just rearrange it so it's being a little bit, there we go, a little bit offset. And let's just make one of these filled. So just to have this a little bit offset, and just something that gives us an indication of space here. Let's zoom in, make sure this is on the corner, and let's fill it in. Cool, zoom out, and that looks good to me as a pattern. I'm going to save it. So go to done, and then you'll see it's added over here. It has this white background, so we can't quite see it. The next step is to create a shape that you want to put it into. So I'm going to go into my rectangle tool, make a shape like this, and say, for example, I wanted to have it in an archway. Go to my white arrow, hold down Shift, and select, drag those both down, and then select your fill and the pattern that you'd like to use. And now the next step is thinking about how I want to actually use this. So I'm going to warp it by using envelope distort. And there's a couple of settings we have to use. So object, envelope distort, and first go to envelope options and make sure this distort pattern fill is selected. If it's not selected, it will only edit the shape and not the fill. Go to OK, and then object, envelope distort, and make with mesh. And this is going to create a temporary mesh that we can use to warp this entire shape. And I'm going to keep this at one row and one column, which just puts a box around our entire shape. And if you add more in, you'll see that they start to add more in. But I think it's going to be easiest to warp it into this sort of form so we can get this bend going across it with just one and one. And it looks like nothing's changed. But what has changed is there is now a corner part right here. If I go to my white arrow and I click on the corner, you'll see this handle sort of buried in there. This is now going to allow me to shift my shape up. So I can click on the handle and shift this up into a rounded sort of form. And I can extend these to make that more exaggerated. And same thing here on this side. Make that a little more exaggerated, a little more exaggerated. I can then take, you can exaggerate this as much as you want. If you need to edit the shape on the inside, you'll see these two options at the top when you're on an envelope shape. So if I click on the edit contents, it'll show me the inside and say I want to get rid of that stroke around everything. Click on the stroke and get rid of it. And now that's a little bit cleaner. So then if I want to put this inside a form, let's make another rectangle. Whoop. And let's just do a solid. Click here, shift click here, and then drag those down. And we'll make that a little tight. And we'll make this just a little bit bigger than what we need. Put it behind everything. And let's just make it black so we can see this and get rid of our stroke. Cool. So then I can go back in and sort of edit this how I need. So I could expand this up like this. And this is where I would then use a clipping mask on top of these. So let's go back in, go to my white arrow. Since this has envelope distort, I want to make sure I'm on the edit envelope. I can then edit this a bit more. And we'll get that nice curve around the edge. Get this curve even more up here. Cool, and now it feels like it's curving into it. And you can select both of these and get them a little bit closer to that edge over here. Select both of these. Cool, now it really feels like it's starting to bend back in space. And what you may want to do is have this point at the bottom. Let's go back to our arrow. Have another form at the bottom down here that sort of fits what you're working with, but I'm just going to keep this curved like that to start out. I'm then going to duplicate this shape just so I have something that's the same form. Select both of these, group it. I'm going to duplicate this one more time so I can use a freeform gradient on it. So take this shape, place it on top of everything. Select your shapes, right click, make clipping mask, and now it's contained within it. Then this shape we're going to use as a freeform gradient to create a bit of a darker fill. And let's actually go back in and just edit this one shape so it's not black. Let's make it something like that so we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to put this here off to the side for a second. Gradient, freeform gradient, and place these over here. Take this off, this off. Cool, because maybe I want it darker up at the top and sort of revealing at the bottom. And you can always add more in here as you like. Let's switch this blend mode, click on the actual shape, go to your black arrow, select the shape, opacity, multiply, and then drag it on top of your form. And there you go. You've got a nice sort of bent pattern happening in the background. You can always take multiple patterns and stack them on top of each other just so it's not as resource intensive. You can also turn down the overall opacity of this shape so that now starts to feel a little bit better inside there. This is one way to start going about doing that, to create a pattern inside an apps-like form. And this is where you would just then take another sort of shape down here. So I'm just going to make a larger circle, V, shrink this down, holding it on options so they shrink at both sides. And then using my shape builder, I'm just going to cut off this bottom one. And then I could do something like turn down, just make it black. I could turn down the opacity of it. Or just make it black, or just make it a similar color as that background color. So let's see if I do something inside here and just make it a red sort of form.